Protesters targeted Chase branches in Seattle to make a statement about Chase's investment in the Dakota Access Pipeline and other pipelines that, of course, activists are very much against for environmental issues and also drinking water issues. Now, the amazing thing about this is that the protest worked. Several branches had to shut down as a result. Police said 26 people were arrested by late afternoon. Activists said they disrupted operations at 11 Chase branches, and 2 other branches closed as well. One individual who was protesting said, "I have a personal responsibility to make sure we have a livable climate." So that's what Andrea and of course all of these protesters are very much concerned with. And I think activists are realizing that it's one thing to go after those who are constructing the pipeline or the companies behind the pipeline. It's also very, very effective, though, to go after the banks that are funding the construction of these pipelines. Chase Bank happens to be one of them.
Yeah, I think it's such an effective strategy. I think they took it from me, except I've never said it on air, so I don't know how they read my mind.
We have some pictures of it, so let's roll through them as Cenk makes his point.
Okay, so I think that these kind of actions at businesses are effective. I think that that's why people are worried about them, and I like that it was a kind of a jovial spirit that they sang songs and talked about the things that matter to them. If possible, what I would want is small business owners to go to these, moms to go to these, your accountant down the street, your dentist to go to these protests, because when you touch their pocketbooks, that's when you get real change. And so it's one thing to do a protest out in the streets, which is great because it brings people together and it shows people that you care. But when you do it in a way that affects their business and affects their bottom line, that's the time corporations pay attention.
That's right. And also keep in mind that the investing that they do, that Chase does and what these big banks do on issues involving the Keystone XL pipeline or the Dakota Access Pipeline, that's actually a drop in the bucket when it comes to their finances. They make a ton of money in other ways, and so divesting from these types of projects or preventing yourself from investing in these types of projects in the future is actually a savvy move if you're one of these banks. And so if you want to know whether or not these types of protests have made an impact, they absolutely have. In fact, ING Group, it's a Dutch bank, agreed to sell 120 million share for the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Yeah, that's $120 million that they divested.
Right.
And Greenpeace activists are also protesting Credit Suisse. And so another really good point that these protesters made is, look, if you go protest the pipeline itself, well, that's their bread and butter, and they're not going to want to change their position on where they make all their money. But for the banks, these pipeline investments are actually a small part of their business. So it's easier to move them on this issue. So I think that that's exactly right, and the banks are where the money is. So really interesting beginning. I think that these protests are going to take on a life of its own. I think it's going to get much, much larger. So if the other side thinks that this is no big deal, well, what you just saw was the tip of the iceberg. My suggestion is to not run into that iceberg. But people have ignored that suggestion before. Right.
We want to show the banks that it's a risky investment, so just avoid it.
We're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. You power this show. Together, we built something amazing. We've broken stories like the Donna Brazil story the mainstream media wouldn't break. We built the studio, we built this network. It's now #1, all thanks to you guys. Let's come build it even bigger and stronger. TYTnetwork.com/join.